Oh my. Hello there. Merry Christmas, and welcome to a very special edition of Anarchy Theater. I'm your host, Anarchy. Today we'll be looking at 3 stories from around the globe. Each of these stories involves the winter solstice. Our first story comes from Taiwan. In Taiwan, the winter solstice is celebrated with the Dongxue festival. And as is traditional in this festival, people eat dumplings, wontons, or other things wrapped in dough. And so, our first story involves the dumpling sage, a sage looking for an apprentice, and the story of how Taiwan's Mount Banping got its shape. Now then, the origin story of Mount Banping. Once upon a time, there was an old sage seeking an apprentice. The old sage sought a youth who was honest and thought long and hard on how he might find an ideal candidate. After much effort, the old sage had an idea. He chuckled to himself deviously and began his preparations. Just what could the old sage be scheming? One day, an old Tangwan, a type of dumpling vendor, appeared with his old cart at the foot of Mount Banping, which wasn't called that just yet. The old vendor put up a sign that posted the price of dumplings. To everyone's surprise, the sign listed that a single dumpling cost 1 penny. 2 dumplings were 2 pennies, yet somehow 3 dumplings were provided for free. The dumpling stand was soon swamped with hungry visitors, all asking for 3 dumplings at a time. The old vendor worked tirelessly to fulfill the orders. Business seemed good, but of course, the old man was giving away all his dumplings without charge. After weeks, a soft-spoken young lad approached the old vendor just before he was closing his stall for the day. To the old vendor's amusement, the youth placed an order for a single dumpling. "Why order just one when you can get three for free?" the old vendor asked. "Well, I've passed your stall several times in the past few weeks," the young lad replied. "And I noticed you giving away your dumplings without making any money, so I felt bad for you. I don't have a lot of money, so all I can buy is one, but I thought this might help you a little." Hearing this, the old vendor revealed his true identity. He was the wise old sage who was seeking a kindly youth to be his apprentice, and he knew he had found his ideal candidate. As for the dumplings, they were made from the dirt of Mount Banping. When the greedy customers found out, they all looked at the mountain, and sure enough, where there once was a gentle slope, a sharp cliff face now stared back at the greedy customers. The tricksy old sage had used soil from the half of the mountain to make his dumplings. It was then that the greedy customers start to notice the dull pain in their bellies. Soon, many fell ill to stomach sickness, their punishment for taking advantage of a poor old vendor who turned out to be a sage. That was our first story from Taiwan, The Dumpling Sage. Our next story comes from Iceland. It's a legend involving a giant cat that eats children who don't have new clothes. This is the story of Eula Katten, the Yule Cat from Iceland. The following is translated from a famous poem by Jóhannes Urquhart, one of Iceland's most beloved poets, describing the beast. You know the Christmas cat. That cat is very large. We don't know where he came from, nor where he has gone. He opened his eyes widely, glowing, both of them. It was not for cowards to look into them. His hair sharp as needles, his back was high and bulgy, and claws sharp on a hairy paw. They were not a pretty sight. Therefore women competed to rock and sew and spin and knitted colorful clothes, or one little sock. For the cat to not come and get the little children, they had to get new clothes from the grown-ups. When Christmas Eve was lighted, the cat looked inside. The children stood straight and red-cheeked with their presents. He waved his strong tail. He jumped and scratched and blew, and was either in the valley or on the headland. He walked about, hungry and mean, in hurtful, cold Christmas snow, and kindled the hearts with fear in every town. If outside one heard a weak meow, then unluck was sure to happen. All knew he hunted men, and didn't want mice. He followed the poorer people, who didn't get any new clothes near Christmas, and tried and lived in the poorest conditions. From then he took at the same time all their Christmas food, and also ate them themselves, if he could. Therefore, the women competed to rock and sew and spin, and knitted colorful clothes, or one little sock. Some had gotten an apron, and some had gotten a new shoe, or anything that was needful, but that was enough. For Pussy should eat no one who got some new clothes. She hissed with her ugly voice and ran away. If she still exists, I do not know, but for nothing would be her trip if everyone would get next Christmas some new rag. You may want to keep it in mind to help if there is need, for somewhere there might be children who get nothing at all. Mayhaps that looking for those who suffer from lack of plentiful lights will give you a happy season and a Merry Christmas. That was our second of our 3 stories today. Our last story of the winter solstice comes from the Assiniboine people of the great northern plains of North America. The Crane and the Otter. Some birds lay eggs early in the season, some later, but the crane is last to hatch. When young ducks and geese were flying away to a warmer country, the young crane was still too weak to fly. Winter was approaching. The mother bird the mother bird asked Otter to keep the bird for her winter. In return, she would reward her in the spring. So she flew away for the winter. Otter kept her in a warm hole. Once, Osni, who you and I know as Cold, came to the camp and killed Otter. And carried off the young crane to his home, where he made him stir the fire. The young crane stirred the fire with his bill. The fire burnt his back, so that the crane's skin is a reddish-brown color from now on. The young crane was starving and became ugly. But he kept hope in his heart because he knew that his mother would soon return home. He went into the sunshine and called her. He continued to do so later in the spring. Osni cried, "Come in here, stop that noise, my grandson." The crane cried all the louder. Osni pursued him and nearly caught him when suddenly a clap of thunder was heard. Osni was struck by lightning, and the lightning tore him apart. The crane returned and asked her young what had happened. He told her that the otter had treated him well, while Osni had abused him. The old bird looked for another otter and said to him, "Henceforth, the cold Osni will never kill you." Thus she paid the otter for his services, This is why the otter can live in the water throughout the winter without freezing. Well then, thank you for joining me today for this very special Anarchy Kitchen Christmas Theater. Alright, that went a lot quicker than I was expecting, so